In this video, we'll be discussing how to backtest high-impact news events in the MetaTrader strategy tester. This video is sponsored by Prosperity Algo and our free Golden Time Bomb Expert Advisor. Do you want to make 100+% annual returns through automating the London breakout and the opening range breakout? Then click the link in the description. So you may have noticed if you've tried to backtest news events in the past, it can be pretty challenging for two reasons. First of all, the MetaTrader strategy tester does not allow web requests in a backtest. Secondly, you're not able to actually access the MetaTrader calendar in a backtest either. And my understanding is MetaQuotes makes this choice in order to essentially protect the security of the terminal. So you can't just download a demo and then accidentally have a bad web request to a sketchy site, and just to kind of protect the integrity of their software. But the issue here is, let's say you have a news filter in your expert advisor, be it either a web-based news filter where you're sending a web request to some sort of third-party site, or you're using the MetaTrader like actual calendar to test high-impact news events. You can't actually test that in a backtest unless you get creative. And obviously, before using anything in a live trading environment, you likely want to backtest it so that you're able to see how it impacts your strategy. Because some strategies, for instance, will generally do better if you avoid high impact news, whereas others will do better with high impact news. And instead of kind of sticking to old adages of, yes, avoid news or trade news, you should really just test it to see what works best. So in this short video, I will walk you guys through a workaround, which I have found is the easiest way to actually backtest news in MetaTrader and in the MetaTrader strategy tester. And by using this methodology, you are essentially able to test expert advisors using historical news events. And really, just kind of to summarize here, what you have to do is you have to download the historical news events from whatever source and save them in a CSV file. And then effectively, when you're actually running a backtest for your MetaTrader expert advisors, you should be able to read from that CSV file and use that in whatever expert advisor you are developing. And as you guys know, in the actual MetaTrader code, you're able to detect if you're in a backtest or not. So you can do like MQL5, MQL, strategy tester, true, false, something like that. And effectively, depending on if you're running live or if you're running in a strategy tester, you can simply have an if statement and decide to use your backtest news calendar or use your live trading news calendar. And when you're in backtest mode, you effectively just read from the file. And when you're reading from the file, then you can be using historical events in a strategy testing environment. So in this video, what I'm going to walk you guys through is just how to actually create that file. And it's as simple as, in this example, we are going to be using the actual MetaTrader calendar and extracting historical high impact news events. And then we will be reading from that file in an expert advisor. And if you're not using MetaTrader here, you would have to just get a CSV file from whatever source you're using. So if you're using FX Street, that's a very popular one for high impact news events, you could simply download the CSV files from there, make sure that it's formatted properly, and then you could read from that file when running your backtests. So let's walk ourselves through this code line by line. And effectively here, it's as simple as we're defining a start time and an end time. And here it's the 1st of January 2021. And then we are requesting historical news events using the calendar value history function. So you can look this up in the MQL5 documentation, but effectively you are requesting all of the events from these time periods here. You will then open a file which you would then be able to read from later on. And the hack here is make sure you're saving it in the common data folder. If you try and save it in the specific one, for whatever reason, it has a much harder time reading it. So the easiest thing you can do here is just make sure that you save it in the file common. Now you're essentially going to be opening it for writing. And then what you will do here is you will loop through the events, because we're assuming that you don't want to save every single high impact or low impact or every single news event from the calendar. So essentially, you will go through these events which you downloaded, and then you will write to the file line by line based on a series of criteria. So here I'm looking for high impact US news events, and I'm going to save that to this file. And it's as simple as, like, here you'd have to use the country code. I believe this is ISO something 270, something along those lines, but look it up in the documentation. There's essentially an ISO-based code for each country. This one is associated with the United States of America, but every country in the EU, for instance, they have their own code. And then effectively we are going to save it in a folder in CSV format, which we would then be able to read later on. So I just wanted to show you guys quickly what that would look like. Here is our saved CSV file, which is in the common data folder. And you can see that we simply save the name of the high impact news event, the date, the country, and the fact that these are high impact news events. So, and you could do this for low impact news events or for different countries and really specify and define the parameters to meet your specifications and your particular expert advisor. And then, as I spoke to earlier here, and this is the code of an expert advisor, which is using a news filter. This is our Golden Time Bomb V8 Pro. And here you can simply toggle depending on if you're in a backtest or if you're in a backtest or if you're not in a backtest, you can then go and decide to use a different news filter. So here, news flag is event. This is pulling from like an actual live news filter, which is going to be pulling from the MQL5 calendar. And this one here is news event from file. It's simply a very simple function which would go and read from that CSV file. So the takeaway here is if you want to backtest news, you need to essentially have this, where in your expert advisor, one of which is being used for live, one of which is being used for backtesting. And now I can show you guys how that would look. So here this is Golden Time Bomb V8 Pro, and we have backtest news file, requires file, and essentially here you can just toggle it on or off. So here I'm going to run a quick backtest for a bit over a year, and this will be backtest news on, and use the news filter. This particular version is using a recovery function, so I'll just show you how the difference in the equity curve would look like if we're running it backtested versus live, with news filter versus no news filter. So here we have with the news filter. So just for your own interest, you can see that we're making 388 trades, and if you run here through the journals, you can see that I have mine set up that it's actually printing what the news event is. So it's like high impact news day detected, event is Joel's job opening. So now it's blocking the trades. So this is how essentially you would monitor if it's working or not. And just to kind of contrast it now, we can go in and say backtest news off and news filter off and run the same test once more. And you can see here that we are making 522 trades versus the 388. And here we're not printing anything. So that is effectively how one would go about testing the use of a news filter in a strategy. And why this is so important is it can make a significant difference in your trading strategy, and you should be able to actually test something before you deploy it live. Guys, drop me a question in the comments if you'd like to know something else, and have yourselves a great day.